Okay, so in our jargon, we say the word bar mitzvah, which literally means becoming a man of mitzvah, responsible for mitzvahs. And in our jargon, that's always quite strictly associated with the 13th Jewish birthday of a boy. Now, the truth is, however, even though we become personally responsible for the mitzvahs at the age of 13, what we call bar mitzvah, we have the idea of chinuch. So of course, even before bar mitzvah, starting from a very young age, we teach our children to do the mitzvahs, to say brachas, to daven, to wear tzitzis, shake lulav, hear shofar, etc., etc. Now, the notable exception is the mitzvah of Tefillin, which we do not start doing before the bar mitzvah. Now, some people, as is the Chabad custom as well, start a couple of months before the bar mitzvah, but that's very different than all other mitzvahs where we start at a very young age. Perhaps the only other mitzvah which we don't start at a very young age is fasting on Yom Kippur, and that is a very good reason for that. We are scared that if we have a young child fast, that could be dangerous for his health. So why is Tefillin different than all other mitzvahs? That's the question. Fasting on Yom Kippur, yeah. Children don't fast on Yom Kippur.
But they also don't fast.
Yeah, but I'm saying fasting on Yom Kippur is a mitzvah. Okay. Yeah, other fasts as well, fine.
When does Chabad start?
Start what?
Wearing tefillin?
2 months before.
Oh, so he almost did that.
Question.
No, he did a little more than that.
What about the thing you were just talking, the
Talis.
Yeah, talis.
Oh, very good. So Benzi's asking why we don't wear a talis before bar mitzvah, or in Chabad for most Ashkenazim even before they get married. That's a good question, but it's not the mitzvah of tzitzis itself. We do even way before bar mitzvah. We wear a talis cotton. We do wear tzitzis. We don't do the mitzvah of wearing a talis gadol for davening, which is a good question, but it's not about the actual mitzvah of tzitzis, which we do fulfill from a very young age. Mm-hmm. Good question, Benzi. Okay, so that's the question which I want to talk about today. Now, there was a Rabbi, a Yemenite Rav, who was very big Talmud Chacham and published lots of books and works, and he was a big proponent of pushing the Yemenite tradition as being superior to others. And his name was Rabbi Kapach, probably more correctly pronounced as Rabbi Kafach or Kafich or something like that. And he has an article here where he says, this whole idea of celebrating a bar mitzvah, never heard of it. No such thing. There's no party when the person's 13, no sunnah, no party. The whole thing is a myth. And this whole idea that a child should start waiting until he's 13 to start putting on tefillin, nonsense. Just like every other mitzvah, you start doing the mitzvah as soon as they're of age that they're able to do it properly. Anyway, he goes on and on for a number of pages with a number of sources, which many of the sources we're going to look at in today's class. And he says, and this terrible custom of making bar mitzvah parties then gave lead to another custom adopted, which Rav Moshe Feinstein. This is not PC. Don't tell this to your daughters. Rav Moshe Feinstein says that this is a reform thing that should be abolished, and that is the idea of making parties for a bas mitzvah. And this is a terrible thing to make a party for bas mitzvah. I know.
Mordechai Kaplan came up with it.
I agree, but don't tell my daughters I said that. Hopefully they don't listen to this class. And he finishes off, and then he says this even led to that they have these brita, some sort of party when a girl is born. I'm not sure exactly what they do over there. Anyway, then he finishes off. Kitzur shel davar, summary. Ashrecha yadus teiman, lucky are you, Yemenite Jewry Hamakairis, which is the original Jewry, Shakol min hagisecha, that all of your customs are Altaris HaKodesh, they are the true, holy, pure, original OG Judaism.
And genetically superior to all others.
Okay. I actually recently saw some argument that actually, there is an argument which probably doesn't have much basis in reality, but it's an argument that is out there somewhere that actually Yemenite Jews are all converts, going back like many hundreds of years. But I don't know, whatever. Okay, fine. Now, let's get back to the sort of, as we usually do, back to the basis of the halacha and work our ways up. So, I'll read to you from the Rambam in the beginning of Hilchos Ishus, chapter 2, Perek Beis Halacha Yud. Haben Meshe Yivalid. Once a child is born until he is 13 years old, we call him in Halacha. We refer to him as a katan, a child, a minor, a nikra tinoik, also a child. Tinoik can also mean a baby. Even if the boy who's younger than 13 years old has already produced many hairs, referring specifically to pubic hairs, that means he started puberty and his body's maturing, it doesn't matter. If he's less than 13, he's still halachically considered a child. But if he does have two pubic hairs, and he's over 13 years old, one day, whatever, it means, because you're talking the 13th year, so as soon as it's his 13th birthday, he's already in the first day of the next year. Nikra Gadol v'Nikra Ish, now he's referred to as a man. Now, what's the difference if you're a man or a katan? So, obviously, the difference is whether or not you have your own personal obligation to do mitzvos. So, for example, the Rambam writes in Hilchos Shvisas Aser in the laws of Yom Kippur, Perek Beis Halacha Yud Aleph, the girl from the age of 12 or a boy from the age of 13, that have already matured physically, they are biblically considered to be adults and have to complete the fast. That means they have to fast for the entire Yom Kippur on a biblical level. But if they have not reached physical maturity, even if they're 13 years old, they're still children, and they're not obligated to fast in Yom Kippur, only rabbinically. On a rabbinic level, a 13-year-old does have to fast the whole fast of Yom Kippur, even if he has not reached puberty yet. But midiraisa, he is not considered an adult until he has both of these factors. He needs to be of age of 13 years, and also have physically matured. Now, there is a notion in halacha called chazaka derava, which basically means that. And there's different opinions exactly when we do or don't apply chazaka derava, but the essential chazaka derava is that if a child is 13, we don't need to check. We could assume that he's already begun the process of puberty to the extent, again, the halachic sort of criteria is shtei cyrus, that he has two pubic hairs, and we don't need to sort of examine him. We can just, for the most part, accept that fact. Usually,
before you get an Eliyahu, do an inspection. We know.
Yeah, so usually the halacha l'maisa is when it comes to for things that are of rabbinic nature, for din d'Rabbanan, we'll rely on the chazaka, and for things that are d'oraisa, we won't. So, for example, Shabbos Zacher, that Shabbos Zacher is a biblical mitzvah to hear Shabbos Zacher, so it's the minhag that you make sure that the person laning Shabbos Zacher is an adult who already has a beard or something like that. Okay, now let's move on to the concept. So that's when a person has his biblical chiyuv to do the own mitzvahs, is once he is of age and also reached physical maturity.
Physical capacity.
Yeah.
What about mental capacity? Any references to that?
In halacha, the only reference you have to that is the concept of a shaita. A shaita is translated as an imbecile, but basically it means somebody who's, again, whatever, I guess the word would be retarded. Somebody who's of age of 13, but he's not able to take responsibility for basic tasks or to have a normal conversation, then halachically they are not considered to be an adult. They're considered in the category of a shaita. And then there's another idea when it comes to financial transactions, kinyanim, buying and selling, that there is also significance to the age of 20, where we assume until then we assume that when it comes to real estate, at least, we assume that until the age of 20, maybe they don't really understand what's going on.
A shota is a person who's deranged, no?
Yeah, deranged, yeah. Okay. It is fine. Right, now, let's go to the mitzvah of chinuch. Before we go to the mitzvah of chinuch, there's one more introduction that we need to know, and that is the Gemara in Megillah. The Gemara says like this, that a katan kari b'Torah mutargim, a katan is allowed to read the Torah and read the Targum, which means that at least strictly speaking, a child would be allowed to get an aliyah. We're not going to get into that right now. A child under bar mitzvah cannot, again, when I say the word bar mitzvah, I'm just using the word as we colloquially use it, that it means when the child's 13. He's not a child, cannot daven for the Amud, what we call today. And a child is not allowed to. Anybody know what Noisias Kapov mean? Birchas Kohanim. Noisias Kapov means to raise his palms. A child cannot duchen. Why can a child not duchen? Says Rashi, because it's not covered for the tzibur, it's not respectful to the congregation to be sort of, I don't know the word exactly how to translate, but basically it's not respectful. They have the whole community standing and you have a little kid standing there giving a bracha to everybody. It's not respectful. So we don't allow...
Can you talk just a child, or like if it's like a whole big...
Excellent point. Very good. Tosfos gets to that. We're going to talk about that soon.
Yeah, because you see, the minhag is kids do it, right?
So certainly that's the minhag in Chabad. I believe there are other circles where the minhag is that children do not duchen, but the Chabad custom, and as is brought in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, and in the other poskim as well, in Siman Kuf Chav Ches, and based on the Tosfos, which we're going to see soon, is that a child can duchen as long as he's duchening together with adults. And not only he can, he should, as long once he knows how, and that once he knows how to do it properly, to hold his hands up, he could say it with the bracha. There's also an idea that a child shouldn't duchen kavua, shouldn't duchen regularly until he has a beard. But that's only in places like Eretz Yisrael where they actually duchen every day, whereas in Chutz La'aretz where we only duchen on Yom Tov, for Ashkenazim that is not an issue. Once the bar mitzvah, they can duchen even if there's no other adults present. Okay, so that was just the reason I brought in the duchening thing is as an introduction to understand the next Gemara with Rashi. So there are really two primary Gemaras which spell out the mitzvah of chinuch, spell out the obligation on the father to train his children to do mitzvahs. The first Gemara, it's actually, the other one is in Bracha, so technically this is the second, but the first one that we're going to learn is in the Gemara in Sukkah Daf and Beis Amidal of Tanur Rabbanon. A child who is able to do the nanuim, to shake the lulav properly, is obligated to do the mitzvah of lulav. Lehis atef, pensi, a child who knows how to do lehis atef. Do you know what lehis atef means? Lehis atef, do you ever hear people say the bracha lehis atef? Lehis atef betzitzis, that's the bracha that you make on a talis gadol. So a child who knows how to do ituf, who knows how to, let's again loosely translate that for now, knows how to wear tzitzis and to put it on properly. Again, once upon a time they didn't have the talis cotton that we have. It was more of a, similar to the talis gadol that we have. So chai b'tzitzis, then his father has to get him, then he has to do tzitzis. Lishmer tefillin, to guard the tefillin, aviv lekech tefillin, his father has to buy him tefillin. Yedei l'daber, once he knows how to talk. Aviv leim de Torah Kriya Shema, his father has to teach him Torah and Kriya Shema. Torah Mahi, what does it mean to teach him Torah? Amar Rav Nuna Torah Tzivu Lanu Moshe Menashe Kilas Yaakov, he should learn that pasuk. Kriya Shema Mahi, pasuk Rishon, what does it mean the father has to teach him Kriya Shema when he knows how to talk? Is the first pasuk. It's interesting that in the 12th pasukim in Mamar Chazal, the Rebbe asked us to teach children. So the first two are these two, Torah Tziva and Shema Yisrael. Okay. Then the Gemara continues, some other things, and then the last thing in this Gemara, I'm skipping a couple lines, is Hayodea Lifris Kapav, a child who knows how to Lifris Kapav. What does that mean? To Duchen. So then if he's a Kohen, you can give him, you can distribute Truma to him in the granary, meaning if he comes to the field where the owner of the field is distributing the truma to the kohenim, then so what age does the kohen have to be that he could show up and you give him truma? He has to be of age to duchen. And Rashi explains that if he's younger than the age to duchen, so then that means how old is younger than the age of duchen based on the previous Gemara we learned?
Before the age of
13 and Shtei Cyrus, so right before he's reached 13 and produced and he's matured, so then he's not of age to duchen. So then you're not allowed to give him truma at the field because again that's not considered respectful because people don't realize, even if he may personally be mature, people don't realize that he's mature enough to treat the truma with the proper respect and maintain purity, etc. But if his father gets a truma, he's allowed to eat it in the house as long as he keeps it clean. Okay, so that's Rashi in this Gemara. So again, a child who knows how to shake lulav, who wears a tzitz, who wears talis, and tefillin, and if he knows how to duchen, then you're allowed to distribute truma to him. Now, seems to be a strange thing going on in the way Rashi understands this Gemara, because on the one hand we started talking about a child who knows how to do these things, and our assumption would be we're talking about a child before the age of bar mitzvah who knows how to shake lulav, so you have to shake lulav, tzitzis, tefillin, everything, right? All mitzvahs, well, even though biblically speaking he's not obligated until he's 13, and Shtei Cyrus, but rabbinically that's what this Gemara is teaching us. However, at the end of this Gemara, Rashi, where it talks about that you could distribute truma to him once he knows how to duchen, Rashi says we're talking about a child who's already over bar mitzvah. So what's going on? You only have to do these mitzvahs once you're bar mitzvah? So this is the question that Tosfos asks. And Tosfos says, Rashi, that doesn't seem right. Rashi seems to be saying that you only have to do these things after bar mitzvah, but it's clear from the context that we're talking about a young child. For example, the Gemara said one of the things was that once a child knows how to speak, you teach him Torah. That's clearly talking about a child younger than the age of bar mitzvah. So the whole Gemara is teaching about younger than the age of bar mitzvah. Says Tosfos, yes, you're right. We're talking here about a child before the age of bar mitzvah, before the age of 13, and already a child before the age of 13, you teach him Torah, and you shake lulav, and tzitzis, and tefillin. Child before the age does wear tefillin. What does it mean that only a child who knows how to duchen can you distribute truma? We're not talking, we don't mean, that means even a child younger than bar mitzvah. The Gemara in Megillah said that a child younger than bar mitzvah cannot duchen. That means he can't duchen alone. That's what Akiva said. So the Gemara in Megillah that says a child can't duchen means a child can't duchen alone. The Gemara in Sukkah that says that once a child knows how to duchen, you can distribute truma to him, is talking about a child who knows how to raise his hands, and therefore he can duchen even though he's below bar mitzvah. And once he's of that maturity, he's even old enough to distribute. He's even mature enough to distribute truma to him in the field, and we could trust his maturity. So, to summarize, what comes out from the two ways to learn this Gemara is, according to Tosfos, it's clear that a child even younger than the age of 13 his father is supposed to buy him tefillin once he knows how to guard them. By the way, what does it mean to guard them? Rashi says it means that he knows not to go into the bathroom with them. And don't forget, in those days they were wearing tefillin the whole day, so it was like you wear tefillin like you wear a shirt. So you could forget not to go into the bathroom with it. So you have to be of age to understand. There's certain places you take off your tefillin before you go in. One moment. So once he's of that age, you have to put on tefillin. Whereas Rashi, it would seem from Rashi that we're only saying that a child that once he's Hevish Shtei Cyrus, his father has to do these things. But it's not clear. It's not clear that Rashi would say that, because Tosfos has a good question. It could be Rashi holds part of the Gemara is talking about a child, part of the Gemara is talking about once he's 13. And it's also could be, it's not 100% clear, but there does seem to be a strong implication, at least for Rashi, that he holds that a child before the age of 13 does not wear tefillin, and perhaps that even after 13 he doesn't wear tefillin unless we know that he's going to be able to lishmer tefillah, to be mature enough to treat them with the proper respect. Vance, you wanted to ask something?
No, you answered it.
Okay, very good. Now, there's another Gemara which we have to look at. The other Gemara is in Brachos Tav Chaf, it's a Mishnah. Noshim avodim muktanim. Women, avodim means aved ktani, which is a man who has the same halachic obligation. A man who's not Jewish, who was purchased as a slave, and he has the same halachic obligation in mitzvahs as a woman. Mendel, we're about to learn a Mishnah that you learned. Uktanim and children. So the Mishnah says, Peturim mikrish bar tefillin. They are exempt. You know what? I'm sorry. My bad. Before we do this Mishnah, I want to read to you the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe in Hilchos Shabbos in Shemam Gimel summarizes the mitzvah of chinuch. And it's based on this Gemara in Sukkah and on some other sources as well. And the Alter Rebbe says, Shia chinuch mitzvah say the age for chinuch when it comes to positive commandments, who b'chol tinoik is with every child, lefi charifoseh v'yidiyoseh b'chol davar, according to his capacity and in understanding with each individual matter. For example, in Shabbos, once a child is able to understand the notion of Shabbos, chayv l'shmer kiddush v'avdalah, has to hear Kiddush and Havdalah. Somebody who knows how to wear tzitzis properly, chayiv b'tzitzis, is obligated to wear tzitzis. And similarly with all other things, whether we're talking about biblical or positive mitzvahs, once a child knows how to do it, we have an obligation to train them to do so. With negative mitzvahs, it's a different age, it's even younger, as soon as they can understand Asr. By the way, there's an argument to be made, and it seems like the Rambam would hold this, that a child, even as young as a few months old, would be obligated in the mitzvah of chinuch to eat a kazayis matzah on the night of the Seder, because a child can be very young and eat a kazayis matzah, especially if you know how much a kazayis is, as we discussed a few weeks ago. And a very young child, even a baby of 6 months or 12 months old, can eat a kazayis matzah within the amount of time of Kedei Achilas Pras. And the Rambam writes that a child who could eat a kazayis dog in Kedei Achilas Pras, his father has to train him. Right? So that matches with the definition of chinuch that Alter Rebbe gives here, that the age of chinuch is b'chol mitzvah lefi inyano. Once a child is old enough, is able to do it. And again, for one child it might be 4, for another child it might be 6. Also, some things depend on the size of the child. For example, in Shulchan Aruch, Alter Rebbe writes about for tzitzis, that until the child's body is of the size to be able to wear a proper tzitzis that has the shear, so there's no chiyuv or chinuch, because he physically can't do the mitzvah. So it just depends on the size of the child to some extent. Our custom is that we start wearing tzitzis from the age of 3, but it's not really the chiyuv of tzitzis until he's at least 6, maybe even older for some children.
Because when they're younger, they can't be
because they're not wearing tzitzis that are the right size.
In the beggar.
The talis cotton. Okay. So now, having said that,
Yeah, that's for sure.
having said that, let's return to this Mishnah in Brachos, which we just started a moment ago. It says, Nashim avodim ktanim, women and children and avodim, Peturim Mekriya Shema and Tefillin, are exempt from reading the Shema. That's the mitzvah to read the Shema in the right time, early in the morning and in the evening. Omen Tefillin, and they're exempt from wearing Tefillin. V'chayavim b'Tefillah, however, they are obligated to daven, of a mezuzah and to have a mezuzah, or b'brichas hamazon and to bench. Says Rashi, Ketanim, children, afilu katan she'agiya lechinuch. Rashi says we're talking about a child who is already of the age of chinuch. Now it's not clear about what Rashi means by that, and the Mefarshim do discuss this, but it could be that Rashi doesn't hold like the halacha that we just learned, that it depends for every mitzvah to feed the age. Could be that Rashi held as a more sort of generic, that there's a certain age, once the child is mature, that now he's obligated in chinuch on all mitzvahs. It could be. So Rashi is saying that even once a child is of the age of chinuch, so you're already training him to do mitzvahs, right? Nevertheless, there's 2 mitzvahs which you don't have to train him to do. What are those? Kriya Shema and Tefillin. Why not? So Rashi says like this, Kriya Shema, because Kriya Shema has to be read at a certain time, in the morning before 3 hours, and in the evening after a certain time, and the father's often not home at that time, so Chazal did not sort of inconvenience the father to have to make sure that he's going to be around at the right time to train his child to say the Shema, so we made an exception for that mitzvah. And also Tefillin, b'shum destam koten ein yedei lishmei gufa shelo yefriach behem, because one of the halachas in Tefillin is that it's forbidden to pass wind while you're wearing Tefillin, and stam koten, an average child, doesn't know would not be able to have enough control over his body to not pass wind while he's wearing tefillin, and therefore Chazal said there's no chiyuv of chinuch in the mitzvah of tefillin. So what comes out from this Gemara? What about? What comes out from this Gemara, from this Mishnah, according to Rashi, that a child, even though he's of age of chinuch, does not need to wear tefillin because we don't trust that he's going to be able to treat them appropriately. What about, now Rashi doesn't say this explicitly, but what about if he's already not a child, if he's already 13 and has Shtei Cyrus? So, the implication would be that now he does have to wear tefillin. Mm-hmm. So, I'm pointing out over here that there's this little bit of ambiguity, because when we read the Rashi in Sukkah, it seemed that Rashi was saying that even once he's already 13, we could only give him tefillin once he knows how to treat them properly. Here, we're saying, no, if he's below bar mitzvah, we don't give him tefillin because we assume that maybe he won't be able to. Mandy, you're allowed to stay even if you're ready to post the paparazzi. You can still stay. At least take a bagel and lox or something, a cookie, So 1 second, Nancy. So Rashi. So here he's saying a child, but it seems from Rashi here that once he's already a gadol, no. Now once he's already 13 and he has Shtei Cyrus, at least then. So for sure we'll tell him to wear tefillin. So that's a little bit of ambiguity in Rashi. However, Tosfos in the Mishnah in Brachos again says, Rashi says we're talking about a child who's Hagia lechinuch. No, it says in the Gemara in Sukkah, the Gemara that we said before, that even a child, his father has to get him tefillin. So you see that there is a mitzvah of chinuch with tefillin. So which one is it? Okay, so Tosfos suggests other pshats how to read the whole Mishnah. It's going to be we don't get into the details of Tosfos, but the bottom line is, again, Tosfos is consistent with Tosfos in Sukkah and Tosfos in Brachos, that there is an obligation of chinuch in the mitzvah of tefillin, just like there is with any other mitzvah, that once the child is of age, you have to teach it. Once he's able to treat the tefillin with the proper respect, you must be mechanech him to do the mitzvah of tefillin, just like you do with any other mitzvah. Yes, Benzi.
If you don't put on tefillin before you can treat it properly, how are you going to learn how to treat it properly if you don't learn how by putting it on?
Oh, very good. So, and maybe that will tie into the idea of doing it a month or 2 months before the mitzvah. We'll see soon. But at the very basic level, the answer is because what we're talking about here is the maturity to understand. Before you go into the bathroom, take this off. If you feel the need to pass wind, hold it in or take off your tefillin before you pass wind. So you could practice that without wearing the tefillin and see that you have the understanding, you have that capacity to do that, and then you could start wearing tefillin. But you're right, it's a little bit difficult to do it without any practice, and maybe that's connected to the minhag of doing it a couple of months before. Now, this Tosfos, again, so Rashi is a little bit ambiguous. Tosfos is very clear-cut, and this is the opinion of, there's all the standard poskim who we follow when it comes to any Erev Halacha, Tosfos and the Rosh and the Rambam and the Rif. All of your standard go-to poskim are unequivocal. The tefillin is no different than any other mitzvah. You must be mechanech your child to wear tefillin. Well, again, once he's appropriate, it could be that for tzitzis the age will be 7, and for tefillin the age will be 11. But whatever the age is, whenever the child comes to that
it's
age,
not going to be exactly on gil chinuch. It'll be based on this, his ability to control.
I would rephrase that to say that there is no such thing as gil chinuch. Gil chinuch is for each mitzvah respect, right? So just like the chinuch of when the child has to hear kiddush is younger than the age of when the child has to wear tzitzis. So the age of when he has to wear tzitzis is younger than he has to wear tefillin. But it's all the same. Once he's able to do this mitzvah properly, he has to do it. Mm-hmm. Now, there is, however, a Sefer HaItur. Sefer HaItur is one of the important Ashkenazi Rishonim, but again, by no means one of the poskim that feature prominently in every halacha, but an important poskim nonetheless. And he says like this. I'm going to read the whole piece and translate and explain. Bear with me here. We have a Braisa. Braisa teaches us, and you should guard this mitzvah, which is referring to the mitzvah of tefillin. I would think that even children have to do the mitzvah of tefillin, and it would be logical to suggest so. Since both mezuzah and tefillin are positive commandments in the Torah, and you know that children, that katanim, have to do the mitzvah of mezuzah, just like it applies to adults, so you would think that children should also do the mitzvah of tefillin. So the pasuk teaches us no. Children do have to do mezuzah, but they don't have to do tefillin. It says, V'shamarta means only somebody who knows how to treat the tefillin with proper respect. And therefore we deduce from here that that a child who knows how to guard his tefillin, his father has to buy him tefillin, etc. And a child who knows how to wear tzitzis has to wear tzitzis, etc. So basically, we're saying that a mezuzah applies even to a child who doesn't know how to treat it respectfully, presumably because a mezuzah it's just on the wall, there's nothing to do, so to speak. Whereas tefillin and similarly tzitzis only applies once a child knows how to treat them respectfully, lishmer tefillin. Says, until her, end quote. That's the Baal HaItur quoting the Brisa. Says the Baal HaItur, Mistabrelon, it seems to me, the high cotton, when we say here the child that you have to buy tefillin for once he knows how to keep them, to treat them respectfully, Ben Yud Gimel Shanaho. We're not talking about a child younger than 13. We mean a child who is 13. Why are we referring to him as a child? What's that? How do I know that we mean a child who's 13? Because it says over there, Chayiv Belulov. And Chel Kanoi Truman Bezagronis. And we can, and it's because the same Gemara again, like we saw before, the same Gemara says that you could distribute truma, that once he knows how to do, and you could distribute truma to him in the fields, and like Rashi said over there, that means we're talking about an adult, a child who's already over bar mitzvah. So we're talking about a child who's 13. Why do we call him a? And he brings the whole raya that we already saw before, that we must be talking about a child who's 13 because that's when he could duch it and that's when you could distribute truma to him. So obviously when we're talking about it, that you have to buy him tefillin, it means once he's 13. Why are we referring to him as a child? For him as a child because he's not yet, we're talking about a child who's 13 but hasn't yet reached puberty. And so he's a child, halachic, biblically speaking, as a child, halachically, he's not, even though he's 13, he's not quote unquote bar mitzvah yet because he hasn't reached puberty. And so therefore, he's chayiv b'mezuzah. Why is he chayiv b'mezuzah? Because as far as mezuzah is concerned, we treat him like we say he's already bar mitzvah, so we have the chazaka d'Rava, I guess. He doesn't say this, but yeah, so we have mezuzah. There's no such concern that he's going to be disrespectful to the mezuzah, so we say he's already chayiv b'mezuzah. But tefillin, even though he's already 13, as long as he doesn't have shtei cyrus, we're not going to allow him, we don't make him wear tefillin. One moment. One second. The Mishnah that said that a child is parted from tefillin is also talking about a child who's over 13, and the reason why he's pater is because he doesn't know how to guard the tefillin. So basically, according to the Baal HaItur, the bottom line is that under 13 you never wear tefillin. Over 13, it depends if over 13, it depends if he knows how to treat them respectfully. If he knows how to treat them respectfully, you're going to get him tefillin. If he doesn't know how to treat them respectfully, you don't. Once he already reaches puberty, then it's not, if I'm understanding correctly, once he already reaches puberty and he's 13, then the Sefer Itur would agree that now you got to wear tefillin because you just have to make sure you know how to treat them respectfully because now you're an adult. Midiraisa. Yes, Bill.
What does it mean to do the mitzvah of mezuzah? Putting it up, does it mean kissing it?
No, it means having it on the door.
Just having it on the door.
Yeah, again, in most circumstances, the child lives in the same house as his parents, so, but there could be a scenario where a child is living alone, or the child has his own quarters within the house, or whatever. Yeah. It's interesting to note that there is a Sefer, halachic Sefer, one second, called the Sefer HaManhig, who is a student of the Baal HaItur, and he writes, a child who knows how to guard the tefillin, his father buys him tefillin, and the word tinoik, whereas cotton, you could say cotton can mean he's already 13, but he's still a child. The word tinoik, which literally means baby, doesn't refer to a 13-year-old. So it's interesting that the Baal HaItur student differed from him in this regard. Yes, Benzi.
So if someone doesn't hit puberty at 13, and then it happens late, they're not considered bar mitzvah when they turn 13?
Oh, so that's how we started off with, that midiraisa they would not be bar mitzvah yet, but for a d'Rabbanan we consider them to be bar mitzvah until that stage.
And that would be like, for example...
So you could count for a minyan, you could get an aliyah, all the things that you regularly need to be bar mitzvah for, it's okay, but to read Parsha Zachar, or there could be some other differences as well, we would say we don't treat him as bar mitzvah until we know for sure that he's reached puberty.
So generally speaking, we do not have... We don't even check into it. We just choose somebody we know for sure.
The truth is that scientifically, my understanding is, I haven't done extensive research, my understanding is that nowadays, most children have enough stay cyrus, have that initial stage of puberty before they're 13. Yes, Betsy.
I was going to ask, what if it happens like a little bit before 13?
Yeah, so 12? That doesn't count. The Rambam says that even that you're asking very good questions, because the question is, let's say a child has many pubic hairs before the age of 13, and none of those count. Those hairs are all not considered halachically relevant hairs because they were produced before he was 13. So now, the moment he turns 13, we have to assume that suddenly at that very instant 2 new hairs were produced. Like, that seems to be scientifically, that seems to be a stretch. So this is a big. This topic is discussed at length. Different ways of understanding exactly.
Because if it came before he's 13, we're assuming that's not maturity hairs. There's something else, right? But then now he's 13 and he got them. So what are they?
Right.
So and he's talking like this now.
Or like this.
But the voice, the voice, the adult, the deep voice doesn't feature in halacha in terms of reaching bar mitzvah. It only features in the terms of a saris, meaning if a person has a I don't know what the word for it. If a person doesn't reach puberty, right? There's such a condition, right? They grow into adults, but their body remains an immature body. So, at what stage do we halachically consider him like an adult? So there we say one of the things we're looking out for is, does his voice change? Okay, so let's summarize the story so far. Again, we have the opinion of Tosfos and all of the classic comment, the Rambam, the Rif. There are all of the primary commentaries who say Tefillin is no different than any other mitzvah. Once he knows how to do it, we have to give him the mitzvah of Tefillin. Then you have the opinion of the Baal HaItur, which says that no, there's no Tefillin before the age of 13, and after 13, that's when he has to wear Tefillin if he knows how to treat them properly. And I guess if he has pubic hairs, then we have to make sure he knows how to treat them properly, perhaps, whatever. And we have the ambiguity of Rashi. One of the ways of understanding Rashi is that he would say that by default we say the child doesn't have to put on tefillin, but if you know specifically that he does have to know how to regard the tefillin, then he would put on tefillin. That's how the Rashba explains it. Okay. How do we paskin la halacha? Arif, I wanted to mention to you, we could talk about this at greater length, but I thought you specifically would like this words from Rabbi Rabinovich and the Rambam, where he has that the Rambam holds there's 2 types of chinuch. There's chinuch where we obligate the child to do the mitzvah, and there's a chinuch where we obligate the father to train him to do the mitzvah. And he fits this very nicely into different categories of mitzvahs, and when he explains why some mitzvahs fall in one category and into another, and he explains how the Rambam is very exact in his wording by each of them, and it all matches up very nicely. So I know that you're a fan of his, so I wanted to mention that to you, and I could send you the reference later.
Does this also answer the steers and the gemaras?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, he goes through all of it. Okay, halacha l'maisa, how do you paskin? So if you open up the Torah, we're going to start Torah, Beis Yosef, Bach, Shulchan Aruch, let's go. Torah, paskins, regular, like you would expect him to, following all the primary paskim. A child who knows how to respect the tefillin properly, his father has to buy him tefillin in order to be mechanech, to train him. Says the Beis Yosef, yeah, this is clear from the Brisa, the Gemara, the Rashi, all the things that we've been studying right here. And then he says, the Baal HaItur says that you don't do tefillin for a child who's younger than 13. I'm sorry, the Baal HaItur's arguments are not strong enough to have us sort of translate the Brisa in this strange way that a katan means a child who's 13, and never a katan always means a child who's younger than 13. What's this all about? And yeah, all of this is, we don't need to pay attention to the opinion of Baal HaItur. We follow the regular opinion, just like tefillin is no different than any other mitzvah. Shulchan Aruch, same thing. Katan ha'yedei lishmer tefillin b'tara, he has to wear tefillin. Continues the same theme in the Beis Yosef in the Shulchan Aruch. Says the Ramah, v'yesh haimrim, there is an opinion, the Baal HaItur, the high katan davka shu b'din ginu sham yem echad, that only a child who's 13 has to put on tefillin. And this is indeed the custom. The custom is that only a child who's 13 wears tefillin. You shouldn't change. So suddenly the Ramah seems to be coming from left field and saying, this one opinion of the Baal HaItur that all the commentaries ignored? No, the custom is to do it like that opinion, and you should not change the custom. You should not wear tefillin before the age of 13. Very strange. Where's this Ramah coming from? Says the Bach, and I think while I read to you the Bach, you may be hearing Rabbi Kapach, which we read earlier, echoing the Bach. And he says, the Bach quotes the whole sugya, and then he says, the Ramah says in Shulchan Aruch that we should not change from the prevalent custom of doing it like the Bala Itur. And this is Tema, this is shocking. Why would you pass like the Itur against all the other commentaries? And he says, this that the Ramah says that that's the custom, could be that that's the custom, because most children are not mature enough to respect the tefillin before they're 13. And even when they are 13, they don't know how to do so. But, okay, there's nothing we can do about them. Once they're 13, they have to wear tefillin. But a child, so it could be that's why the minhag became that way. But, what do you mean? A child who's mature enough, who knows, he says, the child who's already learning Gemara, that means he's already with the program, so to speak, and we could trust him that he's not going to pass wind or go into the bathroom or do other inappropriate things in the tefillin. So for sure, this Bala Itur and the Ramah, we should ignore it completely, and we absolutely should be training our at least 11 and 12-year-olds to wear tefillin. Now, you had a question? Okay.
I think I was going to ask whether whether Rav Kapach acknowledged that there's all these shitas. I mean, at least the Bala Itur, and
he goes through the sugi, but he doesn't care about the Bala Itur. Rav Kapach is Rambam all the way.
Right. Yeah, but to say that kind of extreme language, like what's with these people that are doing it? I mean, there's a very simple answer. They're going according to the Bala Itur. I don't necessarily follow the Bala Itur myself, but it just feels like
you're welcome to read his article and see. I don't remember exactly.
It just seems like very cultural centric, or
absolutely.
It's like the way we're doing it is right. I mean, there's this whole literature that says that this is how to do it. That's
okay. So, but I want to point out one thing. The Ramah presents it as if we're passing like the Bala Itur, but we're not really passing like the Bala Itur, because we give tefillin. Even Ashkenazim, we give tefillin to every 13-year-old. We don't say, "Are you 13? Let's check if you know how to treat your tefillin properly." We give to every 13-year-old. According to Bala Itur, even a 13-year-old, certainly if he's not physically mature yet, we would only give him tefillin if we train him to know for sure that he knows how to treat them properly. We don't do that. So it's presented, the Ramah presents it as if we're passing like the Bala Itur, but we're not really. So
unless we're making
we have this minhag that has a similarity, and it corroborates. It's how do you say it? It matches with the Bala Itur in one aspect, that we don't do tefillin before they're 13. But the other part of the Bala Itur, that even when they're 13, we still don't give them tefillin if they don't know how to treat it properly. That we don't do. That the minhag is that every 13-year-olds wear tefillin. And indeed, all the yakas and those who follow minhag Ashkenaz, you may have heard people say we do the bo bayom, that we only wear tefillin on the day of the 13th of his 13th birthday, and no earlier. There are many people who have that minhag. That's following the Ramah, but it's not following the Bala Itur. The Ramah presents it as if the prevalent custom is following the Bala Itur, but it's not exactly. And so, the Mishnah Berurah in Bir Halacha explains that, and he frames it like this: Le'inyan Katan, he says like this: Le'inyan Katan nagul ha'ilum lahachmir ka'id shaloi laniach tefillin. The reason, and this is my extrapolation, where does this come from out of nowhere? Like, in the whole Shulchan Aruch, there's a system of how we pass, and suddenly out of nowhere, we're choosing the opinion of Bala Itur over everybody else. What seems to be a leniency in the laws of chinuch is really a stringency in the laws of tefillin. We're not being lenient that, don't bother training your 12-year-old to wear tefillin. We're being machmir, make sure you treat tefillin with the utmost respect. We're being machmir not to allow a 12-year-old to wear tefillin because maybe he's not going to treat them with the proper respect.
We just don't go as far as the Bala Itur.
So we're not really passing like the Bala Itur. We're machmir like the Bala Itur, legabi that.
Up until their bar mitzvah.
Right.
Up until their bar mitzvah.
Right, exactly. And the Mishnah Berurah adds over there in Bir Halacha that it could even be that even the opinion of the Bala Itur's opinion based on the Gemara is based on the understanding that they used to wear tefillin the whole day. So you're going to give a kid to wear tefillin the whole day, and make sure the whole day that you don't pass wind and don't have inappropriate thoughts and don't fall asleep and don't go to the bathroom. That's a lot to expect from a child. So it makes sense that we're going to say until he absolutely has to, until he's absolutely obligated to, we're not going to do it. But nowadays that we only wear tefillin for davening, it's fairly reasonable to expect even a child younger than 13 to be able to control his body and his mind for that short amount of time of davening. And he finishes off the Pri Megadim seems to say, like the back, that at least a child, once he's the age of 12, who knows how to learn Gemara, and therefore he's mature enough, should be wearing tefillin, and we could certainly rely on him to be able to treat the tefillin with proper respect. Okay? So, now, I'll read to you two other sources that are similar to this Mishnah Berurah, I think. One is the Aruch HaShulchan, where he says like this: Lanias daiti nir devadim ikar dinu kudas kol hashenim. Certainly, the primary halacha follows all the paskim who hold that you do have to train for the mitzvahs for them. At Zoya Bisman HaTalmud, that was only in those days when they were prushim as reason. We find this in many areas of halacha, that in the olden days they were more refined and they didn't have as many bodily and thought challenges to their cleanliness of body and cleanliness of thoughts as we have today. But nowadays we shouldn't wear tefillin younger than 13 because nowadays we're not so holy. And he says, because nowadays we can't rely on any child under the age of 13. And halavai, she is halavai, even when they're ready bar mitzvah, they should treat the tefillin properly. Good, but there you don't have a choice because he's bar mitzvah, he's chayiv tefillin, not necessarily like the Bala Itur. But before that 13, we rely on the Bala Itur. And then that's the Aruch HaShulchan. And then I also have here a quote from the Eitz Chayiv V'Shalom from I think it's called from the Munkatcher, where Munkatcher is one of the by some Chassid, it's not just Ayakas, and by many Chassidim also they don't wear tefillin before the actual 13th birthday. So he says like this. He says, I think that the proper reason why we follow the Bala Itur and the Ramah is because it says that somebody who wears tefillin has to keep his mind clean of any thoughts of lust. And somebody who doesn't know how to do so properly shouldn't be wearing tefillin. And he says that's why Bachrim don't wear Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin, because we consider Bachrim's hormones to be raging high. He doesn't use these words. And therefore Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin, which is an extra chumrah, so we don't have Bachrim wear Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin. Tefillin the Rashi they absolutely have to wear, because that's an absolute obligation, and therefore Bachrim do wear Rashi tefillin, but Rabbeinu Tam tefillin they don't wear until they're not in Chabad. In Chabad we wear Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin. The Rabbi pushed that we should wear Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin from Bar Mitzvah, but by other Chassidim and Chassidim Munkach they wear tefillin once they're married, and I guess the assumption is that once the person's married, we'll trust him to have more control over his thoughts and to be able to wear a bit of Tam's tefillin. But back to the concept of Rashi tefillin, that's why we don't, once he's actually 13 and absolutely obligated, so we have no choice, he must wear tefillin, but any day before that, it's not absolutely obligated, so we run the risk of him having inappropriate thoughts while wearing tefillin, and therefore we avoid it. Yes, Benzi?
What do you mean by Rabbeinu Tam tefillin and Rashi tefillin?
So, briefly, Rashi tefillin are the tefillin that everybody wears, that you wear, which is that it has inside of it the parshiyos 4. Do you know which 4 paragraphs of the Torah are in your tefillin?
No.
Shema, you just said 2 of them. Shema, V'hoyam, Shemaya, that's 2 of them, and the others are Kadesh, V'hoya, Kivyacha, which are the last 2 paragraphs of Parshas Boy. So, the way they are in the Rashi tefillin, it goes, the order is Kadesh, V'hoya, Kivyacha, Shema, V'hoyam, Shemaya. Rabbeinu Tam holds that you have to switch around the order. It's supposed to be Kadesh v'hoya kviyacha v'hoya mishemaya shemat. Instead of having 3 and 4, he has 4 and then 3. So many people, including Chabad, have the custom that you wear 2 pairs of tefillin. After davening, you take off your regular tefillin, which is the Rashi tefillin, and you put on another pair of tefillin, which has the parshiyos written in the order of Rabbeinu Tam.
And the accepted mitzvah is...
So halacha we paskin that the obligation is to do like Rashi, but that it's a chumrah to do also like Rabbeinu Tam. Okay, so now, until now, basically what comes out is that Sfardim, you would expect that Sfardim should be wearing tefillin, like the Shulchan Aruch says, from whenever they're of age, 10, 11, 12, whatever it is, and Ashkenazim follow the Ramah that at least, that we're machmir. Again, there's a famous joke, they say of the brisker, that he... the joke, we'll leave the joke aside, I'll just say the actual thing as it is, that the briskers are very they're very lenient on fast days. That anybody, you're not feeling well, okay, break your fast. So, but they say that, I think Rabbi Brisker, the Brisker Rav said, I'm not lenient on fasting. I'm machmir in taking care of your health. Yeah, I'm being strict about taking care of your health. So it's the same thing here. We're not really paskening like the Baal HaItur, but we're being so we're not being lenient in the laws of chinuch. We're being so machmir in the laws of tefillin and treating the tefillin with proper respect and dignity and holiness that therefore we don't have children under bar mitzvah wear tefillin. However, but we saw that even for Ashkenazi poskim, you have the Bach and the Pri Megadim quoted by the Mishnah Berurah, that if he's 12 and he already knows how to learn Gemara and he's mature and responsible enough, then he can wear tefillin. And indeed, the Magen Avraham says that in fact the minhag is that 2 or 3 months before the time of the bar mitzvah, you start wearing the tefillin. That is what the Magen Avraham says, and that is indeed certainly the Chabad custom is 2 months.
Yaki.
Yak is also 2 months.
3.
3. And that is the custom of many Ashkenazim, that even though we don't start from the age of 10, 11, 12, but we do start a few months before the bar mitzvah. Now, there's a number of letters from the Rebbe to different people about the time of putting on tefillin, and though the Rebbe did absolutely acknowledge that there are communities where they have a specific minhag like the Ramon, not to start even a single day before the bar mitzvah, and that's a perfectly fine, holy minhag, but in absence of such a minhag, our agenda, based on what the Frierdiker Rabbi said and others, is that we push very strongly that we should start 2 months before the bar mitzvah, and at least to make sure that the child knows how to do it properly by the time he's absolutely obligated. And you have a couple of months to build the muscle memory, etc. It's interesting to note that the Frierdiker Rebbe himself, and possibly other of the Rabbeim also, I'm not sure, did start wearing tefillin at the age of 11. At the behest of his father, but it was done privately and it was kept a secret until many years later. And menzi you say l'shem mitzvos tzitzis as you do that, but that was just something special for him. But for most people, we only started to wear tefillin 2 months before the bar mitzvah. Just to come back full circle to where we started, there's a number of letters where the Rebbe writes quite sharply about a big problem in the Sephardi world. And that is that in the Sephardi world we saw, the Yemenites, and even from the Shulchan Aruch we saw that they start even before the age of bar mitzvah, which is totally fine. That's very good. The problem is, and this is it's a little bit of my own interpretation here of how this happened, but that's why the way I understand it is that because they would start wearing tefillin even way before the bar mitzvah, so that resulted in, as Rav Kapach describes in Yemen, that the day of the bar mitzvah wasn't anything special. And then what happened is that in communities where they were a little bit less meticulous about bar mitzvah, it ended up becoming the other way around, that the child could reach months past his bar mitzvah, and we didn't yet start tefillin. Because in other words, for Ashkenazi communities, they became the strong date associated with the bar mitzvah, that's when you start wearing tefillin. So b'meila, no child is going to go past the age of 13 and not wear tefillin. Whereas in the Sephardi communities, where they're more machmir in the chinuch, that they start wearing tefillin even much time before the bar mitzvah, so that had on the less religious Sephardi communities the opposite effect, that they sometimes delayed where they did their 13th birthday. I forgot, whatever. They waited a few months and possibly in sometimes cases even a few years until they actually started wearing tefillin, and that's a phenomenon which the Rebbe noticed and in a number of places wrote letters to encourage people to make sure to teach their Sephardi neighbors that they actually absolutely have to start wearing tefillin at least by the age of 13. So there's the pros and cons of each attitude. I didn't actually research this particularly, but my assumption has to be that till today, there must be, certainly in Eretz Yisrael, as Surah Bavadi Yosef writes about this, and possibly even in Chutz La'aretz, that there probably are many Sephardim who do in fact start wearing tefillin many months, maybe even years, before they turn 13.